Hi friends, today we will discuss a very important topic in the hematology series, that is sickle cell disease. We will deal this topic in the following headings: introduction, then we will see the clinical manifestation, diagnosis, and finally the treatment part. You can download the MediLectures app to have an access of PDFs of all the lectures, tests and interesting quizzes on internal medicine. So friends, sickle cell syndromes are caused by mutation in the beta globin gene, which is present on chromosome number 11. This leads to change of 6 amino acid from the glutamic acid to valine. Now the hemoglobin which is formed is hemoglobin S. This has 2 alpha chains and 2 defective beta chains in which 6th amino acid is changed from glutamic acid to valine. Now this polymerizes reversibly on deoxynation. The important point is that this hemoglobin S will polymerize reversibly on deoxynation. So this polymerization leads to formation of gelatinous network of fibrous polymer, which stiffens the RBC membrane, increases the viscosity of blood. Also, there is potassium leakage from the RBC and calcium influx. This will lead to dehydration in the RBC, which leads to the characteristic sickle-shaped red blood cells. Now, due to all these changes, what happens is that these sickle cells lose the pliability needed to traverse the small capillaries. These have altered sticky membranes that are abnormally adherent to the endothelium of small venules. These will be adherent to endothelium of small venules. Now this all leads to episodes of microvascular vasoocclusion, and also there is premature RBC destruction in patients of sickle cell anemia, that is hemolytic anemia, which characteristically takes place in liver and spleen. Now the rigid adherent cells also clog small capillaries and venules, causing tissue ischemia, acute pain and gradual end organ damage. So this will lead to all the clinical manifestations seen in this disease. So guys, when we consider the manifestations, what are these? These are characteristically the episodes of ischemic pain, that is known as painful crisis, and there can be ischemic malfunction or frank infarction of organs like spleen, kidney, bones, joints, CNS, lungs, etc., which we will be dealing in the further slides. Now the sickle cell syndromes consist of variety of disorders which include sickle cell anemia as well as other disorders. So in other syndromes, what can be a possibility? That there is inheritance of HbS, that is hemoglobin S, from one parent and another hemoglobinopathy from the other parent. Other parent gives abnormal gene for another hemoglobinopathy like beta thalassemia, HBC disease, etc. Now let's see what is the pathophysiology of sickle cell crisis. First of all, when the sickle cells are present in arterial environment, these are soluble. Now when it is reaching the capillaries and venous system, there is fall in pH, that is fall in oxygen levels. This leads to deoxygenated hemoglobin S, which leads to polymerization of this HbS. Now there will be membrane changes like calcium influx and potassium leakage. The RBCs will be stiff, viscous sickle cell. This leads to capillary venule occlusion leading to microinfarcts, ischemic tissue pain, ischemic organ malfunction and autoinfarction of spleen. This is known as autosplenectomy. On the other hand, there will be associated shortened red cell survival, that is hemolytic anemia, which will be presenting with features like anemia, jaundice, gallstones and leg ulcers. So this is a peripheral smear of sickle cell anemia. This is showing characteristic sickle cells which are sickling on deoxynation. This also shows some target cells. These are target cells Also, certain nucleated RBCs are present that are precursors of RBCs like reticulocytes. Now, before discussing the clinical manifestations, sickle cell anemia is characterized by two features. That is, it is a type of hemolytic anemia. Therefore, hemolysis leads to hematocrit between the range of 15 to 30%. Also, hemolysis leads to reticulocytosis. Now, problem in this sickle cell disease is that these reticulocytes are not normal. These are sticky reticulocytes, which increase the chances of vaso-occlusive crisis. So, in the treatment of sickle cell disease, we have to avoid reticulocytosis by blood transfusion so that hematocrit is corrected, and drugs which suppress reticulocytosis. Another feature seen in sickle cell disease is granulocytosis. So WBCs can fluctuate substantially in sickle cell disease. The count is very unpredictable during the painful crisis, infectious episodes, and other intercurrent illness. Now coming on to the clinical manifestations. So the intermittent episodes of vaso-occlusion in the connective tissue and musculoskeletal structures is manifested by acute pain, tenderness, fever, tachycardia, anxiety. This is known as painful crisis. Now this pain is lasting for few hours to 2 weeks. This painful crisis is the most common clinical manifestation of sickle cell disease. Now the important part is that if the patient is experiencing more than 3 episodes of painful crisis per year requiring hospitalization, this is poor prognostic factor and is associated with decreased survival. Now the provocative factors for this painful crisis include infection, fever, excessive exercise, anxiety, abrupt changes in temperature, hypoxia, and hypertonic. So these factors should be avoided as much as possible. Now we will be discussing the clinical manifestations according to the organ involved. So first of all, let's discuss about spleen. So repeated microinfarction in the spleen leads to its loss of function. So splenic function is lost within 18 to 36 months of life. First 18 to 36 months of life, the splenic function is usually lost. And this increases the susceptibility to infections like pneumococci and Haemophilus influenza. Increased risk of such infections. Another thing is splenic sequestration crisis. This is a rare phenomenon. In this, there is acute venous obstruction of the spleen. So this leads to trapping of entire arterial output in the obstructed spleen, and for treatment we will require emergency transfusion, and if it is not controlled then we will require splenectomy. So spleen is a very important organ and it is most commonly involved in sickle cell disease. Now occlusion of retinal vessels can produce hemorrhage, neovascularization, and retinal detachments. Now in kidneys, sickle cell disease can lead to renal papillary necrosis. So in urine analysis, the typical feature which will be found is isosthenuria, and more widespread renal necrosis can lead to renal failure. There can be ischemia in bones and joints leading to aseptic necrosis of femoral and humeral heads. Can also lead to chronic arthropathy and susceptibility to osteomyelitis with organisms like Salmonella. Now a syndrome known as hand-foot syndrome is seen in sickle cell disease. It is due to painful infarcts of digits and dactylitis. Chronic leg ulcers can be seen due to ischemia and superinfection in the distal circulation. Now, the involvement of central nervous system can lead to stroke, which is more commonly seen in children with sickle cell disease than adults, and the stroke is usually hemorrhagic. It is usually hemorrhagic. Now, other than stroke, there can be chronic subacute central nervous system damage. So, it occurs in the absence of overt stroke and is distressingly common phenomena. It is due to CNS sickle vasculopathy leading to chronic infarcts, and there is cognitive and behavioral abnormalities in children and young adults. Now, involvement of respiratory system is very important. It can lead to either acute chest syndrome or chronic subacute pulmonary crisis. So what happens in acute chest syndrome is that it is a distinctive manifestation characterized by chest pain, fever, cough, tachypnea, and decreased arterial saturation. It mimics pneumonia, pulmonary embolism, bone marrow infarction and emboli, lung infarct, and myocardial infarction. Now, the important point is that it occurs due to in situ sickling in lung and or bone marrow, and importantly, this is not due to sickling in coronary arteries. Now, the repeated episodes of acute chest syndrome are associated with decreased survival. Now, the another entity is chronic subacute pulmonary crisis. This leads to pulmonary hypertension, pulmonary artery hypertension, and finally, it can lead to cor pulmonale, that is right heart failure, and features like generalized body edema. So this occurs because free hemoglobin S consumes NO2, which is a pulmonary vascular vasodilator. So the consumption of NO2 leads to vasoconstriction and pulmonary arterial hypertension. Now, all the features which we have discussed were of overt sickle cell anemia like vaso-occlusive crisis in spleen, brain, marrow, kidney, lung, aseptic necrosis of bone, gallstone, Priapus, and ankle ulcers. The hemoglobin levels are typically 7 to 10 gram per deciliter. It is a normocytic normochromic anemia. When we do the hemoglobin electrophoresis, the hemoglobin S to A levels are 100:0. That is, hemoglobin A is totally absent and the fetal hemoglobin is in the range of 2 to 25%. Now, when we consider sickle cell trait, that is abnormality in only one chromosome. So, it is often asymptomatic. And it is rarely associated with anemia and painful crisis. Painless hematuria can be seen in sickle cell trait, and this occurs due to papillary necrosis, renal papillary necrosis, which can lead to painless hematuria, leading to isostenuria, and rarely there can be slowing of papilla, leading to urethral obstruction. So these all findings can be seen in sickle cell trait, that is hematuria due to papillary necrosis, which can also lead to isostenuria and urethral obstruction. So the hemoglobin levels are typically normal, MCV is normal, and on hemoglobin electrophoresis, the HbS to A levels are 40:60. Now, when we consider sickle with beta thalassemia trait, This will present with vaso-occlusive crisis and can also be associated with aseptic necrosis of bone. Hemoglobin is 7 to 10. The MCV is 60 to 80, which is due to microcytic features of associated thalassemia. Now, when we consider the electrophoresis, the HbS to A levels are typically 100:0. That is, A levels are, hemoglobin A is totally absent, and fetal hemoglobin due to trait is 1 to 10%. Now, when it is sickle and beta thalassemia, not trait but thalassemia itself, the crisis will be rare and aseptic necrosis will be rare because it will be protected by the another hemoglobin which is due to beta thalassemia. So association of beta thalassemia is with better prognosis than with beta thalassemia trait. So the hemoglobins levels are typically normal. MCV also tends to be normal, and the S to A levels are 60 to 40. Now hemoglobin SC disease, that is, one is hemoglobin S and other chromosome is hemoglobin C. Now hemoglobin C is due to replacement of glutamic acid to lysine on the 6th position of the beta globin chain. On the other hand, sickle cell anemia is due to change of glutamic acid to valine. So it also leads to rare crisis and aseptic necrosis and sometimes leads to painless hematuria. The hemoglobin is almost normal, MCV is normal, and 50% is hemoglobin S and 50% is hemoglobin C. Now, some important points about hemoglobin SC disease are that there is lesser degree of hemolytic anemia, and it is having increased propensity to develop retinopathy and aseptic necrosis of bone. So in contrast to frank sickle cell anemia, it is lesser hemolytic and has increased propensity to develop retinopathy as compared to sickle cell disease and also aseptic necrosis. Now coming on to the diagnosis part. So the suspicion should be raised in the patient who is presenting with hemolytic anemia, RBC morphology showing sickle cells, target cells and other features, and intermittent episodes of ischemic pain. So these candidates are having suspicion for sickle cell disease. Now diagnosis is confirmed by hemoglobin electrophoresis, as we have discussed in the previous slides, mass spectroscopy and some sickling tests. Now thorough characterization of exact hemoglobin profile of the patient is important because other sickle syndromes other than frank sickle cell anemia, for example sickle thalassemia or hemoglobin SC disease, these have very distinct prognosis and clinical features. So thorough characterization of exact hemoglobin profile is very important. Now the diagnosis is usually established in the childhood, but occasionally patients often with compound heterozygous states do not develop symptoms until the onset of puberty, pregnancy or adult life. So adult patients of sickle cell disease can also be there. Now genotyping of family members and potential parental partners is very critical for genetic counseling. Now the factors which are associated with increased morbidity and decreased survival include more than 3 painful crises per year requiring hospitalization, chronic neutrophilia, patient with history of splenic sequestration, that is acute veno-occlusion, history of hand-foot syndrome and second episodes of acute chest syndrome. So patients with repeated episodes of acute chest syndrome may need lifelong transfusion support using partial exchange transfusion if possible. So in partial exchange transfusion, what is done? Whole blood is removed from one arm and packed RBCs are given from the another arm, maintaining the hematocrit. Now coming on to the treatment of sickle cell disease. There are certain necessary measures. First of all, the patient should be familiar with the pattern of symptoms to avoid any unnecessary hospitalization. Additional preventive measures include regular slit lamp examination to monitor the development of retinopathy. Also, we should give antibiotic prophylaxis in splenectomized patient during dental or other invasive procedure. Vigorous oral hydration should be given during the anticipation of periods of extreme exercise, exposure to heat or cold, emotions, stress, and infections. And as far as possible, these should be avoided. Another necessary measure is pneumococcal and Haemophilus vaccination in these patients for prevention of infection by these bacteria. Now, the vaccination is less effective in the patients who have undergone splenectomy. Therefore, these patients with sickle cell disease should be vaccinated early in the life, especially in childhood. Now, the treatment of acute painful crisis involves vigorous but careful hydration, analgesia, which should be aggressive. The drugs which can be used for analgesia are morphine and ketorolac. So morphine is given for severe pain in the dose of 0.1 to 0.15 milligram per kg, and it has to be given every 3 to 4 hours. On the other hand, ketorolac is very effective drug, especially for bone pain, and it is given in the dose of 30 to 60 milligram initially, followed by 15 to 30 milligram in TDS dosing thrice daily. Now, inhaled nitrous oxide can also be used for short-term pain relief, but measures and utmost care should be taken while giving inhaled nitrous oxide because it leads to increased oxygen affinity with hemoglobin and it can lead to tissue hypoxia. Now, oxygenation is another very important treatment strategy for acute painful crisis, and it should be done to maintain the arterial saturation. Now, most painful crises will resolve within 1 to 7 days. 1 to 7 days. Now, when we consider the importance of blood transfusion will be required in patients. Now, coming on to the treatment of acute chest syndrome, it includes, first of all, it is a medical emergency that requires management in ICU. It involves hydration, which should be monitored carefully to avoid the development of pulmonary edema. We have to avoid pulmonary edema. Vigorous oxygenation should be done to maintain the arterial saturation. We have to maintain the arterial saturation. The differential diagnosis of acute chest syndrome like pneumonia and pulmonary embolism should be ruled out. Because these have very similar clinical presentation. Now, transfusion is done to maintain hematocrit level more than 30%, and emergency exchange transfusion is required if the arterial saturation is less than 90%. Now, the drugs used in sickle cell disease are hydroxyurea and D-cytabine. So, hydroxyurea is the mainstay of therapy for severe symptoms. It is given in a dose of 10 to 30 milligram per kg per day. So, what is its role? It will increase the fetal hemoglobin within few months. Other beneficial effects include RBC hydration. There is effect on vascular wall adherence and also suppression of granulocyte and reticulocyte count. Now, it is given in patients who are having repeated episodes of acute chest syndrome or having more than 3 painful crises per year requiring hospitalization. So it is indicated in these patients. Now another drug is D-citabine. So it is 5-deoxyazatidine. 5-deoxyazatidine. It is a congener of 5-azatidine, but because of the toxicity, acute toxicity and potential of carcinogenesis of 5-azatidine, it was modified to make 5-deoxyazatidine. It can increase fetal hemoglobin with more acceptable toxicity. Now coming on to bone marrow transplantation, it is the definitive treatment for sickle cell disease, but it is effective and safe only in children. So do we have any option for adults? Yes, we can do mini transplant in such patients, adult patients with sickle cell disease. What is this mini transplant? It is partially myeloablative conditioning regimens. Partially myeloablative conditioning regimen. Now gene therapy includes zinc finger nucleases, CRISPR, and manipulation of BCL11A, which leads to transition of hemoglobin F to hemoglobin A in adults. So this technique is used to de-repress hemoglobin F, that is fetal hemoglobin, which will increase its level and will be beneficial in sickle cell disease.